Welcome back to the Postpartum Plan podcast. This podcast is designed to support and empower you through postpartum. Whether you're expecting, in the early postpartum days, or beyond, this space is for you. I'm your host, Madison Fugere, a dedicated postpartum doula and pediatric sleep consultant, striving to help parents feel confident and supported in their parenting journey. Each week, I'm sharing practical tips and expert advice to help you navigate all the postpartum things with confidence. Well, as much confidence as you can. Let's embark on this journey together, making your parenthood as serene and supportive as possible. Today, I have Arielle back with me for another episode. Arielle is a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in pelvic floor physical therapy in pregnancy and postpartum. She's also a mom of two, a yoga teacher, a certified pre- and postnatal coach, a pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist, and a certified postpartum nutrition professional who is obsessed with easing the transition into motherhood through whole person support. Arielle started Find Your Way Mama LLC, pelvic floor physical therapy, and postpartum wellness to elevate how we care for moms by helping them reconnect to mind and body and actually heal postpartum so that they can feel strong and confident not only in their bodies but in who they're becoming. Today, I'm super excited to have her back so that we can talk all of the things. Definitely check out all of the information in the show notes below, but let's get into it. Thank you so much for coming back and joining me. I'm so excited.
Yes. Thanks for having me back, Madison. It's been a while.
Course.
So
It has, which also I think entails that you have to reintroduce yourself because I think obviously people listening may not have listened to our last one. So yeah,
well,
tell everybody about you.
they should go back and listen and then
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'm Arielle Martone. I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist since 2009, so it seems like a whole lifetime ago at this point. I'm also a certified yoga teacher, pre and postnatal coach, and pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist. So I really blend all of that training into the work that I do, primarily focusing and specializing right now on pregnancy and postpartum.
I love it. I love all the work that you do. I was just talking to her about how I was scrolling. Well, I'm like saying I'm talking to Aria about, and I'm talking to the people that are listening. Y'all know what I mean. Um, about how I was like scrolling and having some of her posts come up and was like, oh, yes, I'm gonna share this. And then totally got sidetracked and like I'm gonna go back and share everything so everybody can go check out my stories and her page because the stuff that you've been sharing, especially recently, I feel like has been super relatable. So I don't know if you've been like super focused on Instagram recently, but nice job.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I've actually been a little bit less focused on it. I'm gonna say I've been trying to, other than like checking in on my DMs and doing an occasional post, I've really been trying to backtrack away from social media. And I know as a small business owner,
So
that's
hard.
taboo to say. But we can kind of get into that a little bit too. I think, for my mental head space and
Yeah,
clarity, I've just noticed I've been looping on it more than I would like.
right.
And I'm just trying to break that habit. And I'm, finding that I'm a lot happier that I'm on it less.
It's so hard
But
of a habit to break,
yeah,
especially as a business owner when you do have to try to like when you're trying to utilize all the tools to grow your business, right? But I think that like yeah, this kind of seamlessly gets us a little segue here going of I know we wanted to kind of touch upon nervous system regulation and like the connection of mental health and physical health to your body, especially postpartum and all the things that have to do with, your muscles and pelvic health and all of those lovely things that connect to after having a baby. Um, which, yeah, brings you to that mental side of things. And oh my gosh, can social media be such a stressor?
it can. And so I'll kind of jump back a little bit too for anyone who didn't hear the last episode where I was on and I shared a
Yeah.
bit more about my story. I struggled with my own postpartum. I had postpartum depression. I had some pelvic floor issues that I was dealing with. And just like many other moms, I would be scrolling on social media and I found that I was in hindsight, obviously, because we are always so much more aware.
2020.
Yeah. If I could tell myself, back then, but I'm going to say it for all the moms listening, especially the newer moms listening. Um, you know, I would use it in my excuse was, oh, it's my break, or I just need to kind
Right.
of reset. Let me see what's going on, or let me research and
Yeah,
find some more information, and you end up getting in this loop, and before you know it, you stop trusting yourself because there's so much information out there
right.
that you become more disconnected from who you are and from what your values are and what speaks true to you. And it can lead to more postpartum anxiety and to feeling more down, that comparison, comparing, I'm having a hard time talking today, comparing
It
yourself to
happens.
others, whether you're meaning to or not. And that can be what their day to day looks like, or what their postpartum body looks like, or any
Right.
number of things that can trigger you in those especially vulnerable early days. So my
Absolutely.
my number one recommendation, other than all the pelvic health things that we'll get into, is to just put the phone down a little bit more and
Uh-huh.
start tapping into yourself a little bit more. And
It's so
honestly, like,
hard for so many people, especially with like the middle of the night stuff.
oh yeah, yes, and you probably know how
Oh, I'm
that
horrible
is.
at it, y'all. I'm hiding my face from the camera right now. The amount of scrolling that I do in the middle of the night. Although I will say, I was
But
actually just
you need
telling
to stay
somebody.
awake.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I will say to some people that I was saying earlier today to somebody that when I was scrolling in the middle of the night, though, working overnight shifts as a postpartum doula, I often then find that other people, because Instagram tells you like who else is active, or Facebook will tell you. I'm like, okay, those are the moms that need me. Those are the moms that need help.
Yes.
Those are the parents that need support. And so I will say that sometimes it was creating like a little bit like of a an overnight like nocturnal support group.
Yes.
Right? But it's a lot. And I think that that mental side of things, people know can affect the physical side of things, but I think you forget how much it is. How much it really impacts everything, right? And I know that you wanted to kind of dive into how it really does affect the nervous system and with pelvic floor health and muscle tightness and all the stress and anxiety that connects, that can create, physical issues too, right?
Yes. And I want to say, like, first of all, it's not all in your head. And we're going to be
Right.
talking about kind of like the mind body connection and how it's interrelated. But it's not all in your head. It's really in your body. But because of that, like, the stress is living in your body.
Right.
But the anxiety can feed into that. And, you know, it really is all so connected that we can't kind of untangle the one from the other,
Yeah.
especially when we talk about our pelvic health and the pelvic floor. It's one of the few areas in the body that is innervated by both the autonomic nervous system, the fight and flight and rest and digest parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, as well as our volitional nervous system as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really kind of the point that you just made of it's not just insane. You're not going crazy in your brain. There
No.
are things happening that your physical body is reacting to, right? And we're also not being like super earthy, crunchy people here telling you that like you're needing to do like some wild mental, meditation for 14 hours a day to feel better. But like we also need to recognize that mental plays a big aspect in it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And our physical, like how we're feeling in our body physically, then also feeds back into how we're feeling mentally and emotionally as well. And that's why we really have to work from both sides, especially postpartum, where we're really in a more vulnerable state for both, because our body is physically healing, and emotionally, like mentally and emotionally, we're transitioning into motherhood. And that transition happens with every birth. It's not just your first time going from no kids to one kid.
Right.
You're constantly evolving. There's constantly a transition that's happening into motherhood, whether it's your first kid or your fifth. So you take time to process. Our brain is literally rearranging itself during
Yeah.
that time. Um, so so there's real changes going on. Mom brain is in fact a real
A
thing.
literal thing.
So yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I guess I would love to get some of your like professional side of this tips and tricks of okay, people are experiencing this right now. Like those of y'all listening are in the state of like, yep, this is me. Now what the F do I do? Right.
Yeah.
And so I know that you have like a program that you support people through. And one of the big parts of that is this nervous system regulation. And like, how do we do this in order to make our bodies and our minds like a little bit more calm, right? More workable. So kind of what is that kind of I've said kind of 14 times. Maybe we're both just a hot mess today. It's fine.
Yes.
But like, yeah, so what should people be doing? There you go.
Yeah. So first, I think getting reconnected to yourself is really step one. Kind of getting refamiliar with your body and also with your mind. So I do talk about journaling a lot in my program. I find it to be a really helpful tool. If you haven't written out your birth story yet, I really recommend that you do that.
Mm,
And it's something that you don't have to hold on to. You can always, write it out and then burn it, toss it away. Especially if you found that it was not the experience that you wanted.
yeah,
It's not something that you have to hold on to forever, but handwriting it physically, going through the process of writing it out can be really helpful. And sometimes that in and of itself can help people's muscles and the fascia, everything in our body that kind of is holding on to that tension, kind of relax and let go. And I find that in my work in clinic as well with clients, as we're doing manual work, if they're talking through some of their birth story with me, and we can get to a point where they're just settling into what happened, acknowledging it, acknowledging that they're now safe and that it was really tough. We're not brushing over, we're not glossing over anything. We're really feeling into what
hmm,
those feelings were in the time, and allowing them to come through. You can feel it in the tissues just kind of relax and let go a little bit, which is really neat to feel.
yeah,
So that's kind of step one, is just learning to sit with yourself and process the uncomfortable emotions. And
right.
I would love to say, oh, it's all easy breezy. It's these five steps and we're done. But it is uncomfortable. And I think that that's okay. And I think the more comfortable we get with being uncomfortable, the more resilient we become. And
Yeah.
that's physically as well as emotionally, again, because they're so intertwined. But really, it's that reconnection piece. So, reconnecting with yourself through writing, reconnecting to your body, with even something as simple as just like pelvic tilts, like rocking your pelvis back and forth early postpartum, just to start to bring movement back to the area, help with circulation, and just reconnect. Because whether you had a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, we can feel really disconnected from our
Right.
pelvis and our pelvic floor. If we were, let's be honest, if we were even really connected with it in the first place,
First
because
place.
oftentimes we're not.
Right.
Um, so a lot of my work is kind of building in that connection, starting to trust ourselves, starting to feel what we're feeling, again, both emotionally and physically in our body. So as we're
Hmm.
doing those pelvic tilts, like, are we noticing any tension in our hip flexors, or is the area by our tailbone a little bit sore? And just drawing our attention to those places, can be really helpful and be a really good first step.
Yeah.
um, and then as far as the nervous system regulation techniques, it's not so much of like an on-off switch where we're trying to, turn down our sympathetic nervous system or that fight flight and then turn on our parasympathetic, but more of like dialing it up and down, because they're both running at all times
Mm,
and they need to. So it's not that we're ever going to like fully shut off that fight or flight in us. It needs to be going in the background on low so that it can kick
right.
in when it needs to and then dial back down. So just kind of activities to stimulate the vagus nerve. So it can be low humming, can be really helpful. So you can even do like your pelvic tilt while you're doing some low humming. That
Mm,
low vibration can be really soothing to the nervous system. And then that's how you can start to, as you're visualizing it, kind of connecting with what you're feeling emotionally, visualizing your body doing the movement that you're doing, you start to really attack it from all areas. So you're
right.
attacking the emotional, the mental, bringing in the nervous system while you're doing some movement.
I love that. I love that it can be so multifaceted, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word to use.
Yes, absolutely. And it needs to be. And this, that was the whole reason why I started my program in the first place. Was because as someone who was struggling with her own postpartum and had I was doing my own pelvic floor physical therapy, and I was working with a counselor for the postpartum depression. But it really wasn't until I started to make it multifactorial and to really blend the two things that I was learning and the two practices that I was doing together, that I really started to feel more like myself again and things
Yeah.
started to click. Um,
Right,
and I
and some
think
of
that's
these things are gonna like feel make people feel more like themselves too, right? Like some of these different things are probably stuff that you were doing before in your own life, maybe. Like maybe journaling was something that you enjoyed, and that can help you to kind of like come back in touch with it, right? Or like
mhm.
movement or whatever, right? So I'm sure every aspect of it might feel a little different for each person.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, I was not a writer. I was I never journaled before until postpartum. And I just started with like, one or two prompts that I would write out for myself and do a little bit. I wasn't writing pages necessarily. Some days it ended up turning into that. But again, it's really about integrating these practices into your life. So I would write a little bit in the morning as I was having a cup of coffee and breastfeeding my baby. So, it doesn't have to be where you're sitting alone by yourself at 5 a.m. because you're waking
Right.
up an hour before your baby, who is
Right.
obviously staying asleep until you're wanting them to wake up,
Right,
right?
of course.
So, so it's really about just integrating it in and doing really small steps and multiple small steps each day that will eventually create like that whole big picture and get you back to feeling again like yourself, obviously with some changes. Like I'm not
Right.
saying you're going to feel 100% like you were
Before
pre-baby,
baby. Yeah.
because your values change, so much changes.
Right.
um, but at the heart of it, when you really get into like, do I actually feel like myself, not that version of myself, and maybe that's the way to put it. You're not going to feel like that version
Yeah.
of you pre-baby, but you will feel like you, like that authentic version of
Right.
you, when you let yourself really heal and reconnect and process, like move through the process of postpartum without feeling, with I would say without feeling the pressure. That's really hard. Without succumbing to it, right? Because we're going to feel some of that bounce back pressure. Like we're not living in a bubble, um, but not letting it weigh in on us too heavily, and kind of just really taking it one step at a time.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that when we were talking about before hitting record here, we were talking about the program that you have too. You were saying that like the program you support has multiple kind of ways to support and attack this postpartum period and the wellness of you as a whole being, right? And I think just like how we're talking about one aspect of it being the nervous system and all of that kind of aspect to postpartum recovery right now, you're saying like, yeah, we need to attack that from different perspective as well. So I think it's kind of such a good theme to have that, it's gonna take people different ways of getting to where they want to be. Is that the right way to put it? I mean, I don't even know. I have this thought in my brain and I can't articulate it in words today, so I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, well, I think that, one, it's not linear, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Like you're gonna have kind of ups and downs for sure. Like nothing in life is linear.
right.
Um, and it really is about finding what works for you. So I
Right.
provide you a couple of different tools for uh, what I call like the pillars of postpartum wellness. And the great thing for me is that the pillars of postpartum wellness overlay identically with the pillars of pelvic wellness. So there's like movement, nervous system regulation, nutrition, um, and rest are the big ones. And I don't say like sleep specifically because sleep early postpartum is a whole different
A
beast.
whole beast.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't look, especially in those very early days, you're not going to get an 8 hour stretch right away. And it may take a really long time to get there.
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay. You can still feel really rested when you're focusing on those other pillars of wellness,
Right.
particularly the movement piece, the nutrition piece, and the nervous system regulation piece. Um, that's going to support your pelvic health. That will ultimately support how rested you feel and support your wellness.
I love that. Now, if somebody's listening and they like are in the super early days or kind of are just postpartum, I guess it doesn't really matter when postpartum, and are feeling like what we were talking about to start this conversation of this kind of you're feeling overwhelmed, there's a lot going on, is kind of where they're at, and they're wanting to try to help to tame this a little bit. Um, is there a good place to start? I know that like obviously there's so many different ways to go about it, and you kind of talked a little bit about maybe a little bit of movement, like a pelvic tilt, right? But like, is there a specific order or way that they should be kind of attacking this?
So I would start first, first with the breath. That's always a really good place to start because you're going to get that physical aspect because as we're breathing, it automatically engages our pelvic floor. So you're going to get some of that into it as well. It's also really good if you just had a C-section, directing your breath to that incision just for a
Okay.
little bit of gentle movement, gentle stretching to that
Yeah.
area. Um, or I should say more gentle mobility to the area.
Yeah.
You're not stretching the area with the breath, but you will feel some movement there, and that can be really helpful for that incision site. Um, but so you have the physical aspect of the breathing, and then you also have the nervous system regulation piece, and then you'll notice the mental emotional piece kind of as a byproduct of it, because as we're
Mm,
slowing down our breath, our heart rate automatically starts to slow down and
right.
then we start to feel calmer ourselves. So we are getting that physical movement, that physical connection, especially if we're thinking about it, because where our attention goes, like our energy flows. So we can kind
Yeah.
of really target the area a little bit more by thinking about it. When we visualize things or just think about things in our minds, those areas in our brain light up. So if we're thinking about our pelvic floor as we're breathing, if we're thinking about it just lengthening down on the inhale and then just gently recoiling on the exhale, those areas in the brain automatically light up. And then as you're physically doing it as well, they light up again. So you're getting, I'd say like double the impact, but you can really
Yeah.
kind of target into that area a little bit more.
I love
So
that.
the breath is always a really good place to start. And then I do say like starting with nutrition is also really helpful. Your nutrition matters so much for pelvic health. Like we are
Yes.
all about your number twos. We want to know all the things. There's no such thing as TMI in the pelvic health world. But it does impact your pelvic health and your physical recovery
Yeah.
if you're constipated, for instance, which is so common after baby, so common in
Right.
pregnancy too, and then you bring
Oh
it into
yeah.
the
Hey guys, it's Madison. Yeah, I'm here interrupting myself, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about something that can feel so overwhelming as a parent: sleep. So, if you are in the thick of the sleepless nights, struggling to figure out how to get your baby and yourself to get more rest, then I want you to know that you're not alone. Here's the thing: if what you're doing is working for you, great, keep doing it. But if it's not, there are resources to help, and I'm happy to be one of them. As a certified pediatric sleep consultant, I work with families to create personalized sleep plans that actually make sense for your current and unique situation. No cookie cutter advice, just practical strategies that match your parenting style and your child's personality. Because let's be real, sleep is not a luxury, it is a necessity. So, if you're ready to make a change, I'd love to help. You can book a free sleep connection call on my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com, or reach out to me on Instagram at serenemoments.doula. To postpartum
Postpartum
as
with
well.
you. But then you're putting more strain on the pelvic floor, which is already trying to heal and recover.
Mm,
So a lot, focusing on your nutrition, making sure you're getting enough fiber, that you're getting the right minerals and nutrients, and that you're, warm, cooked, broth based foods can all be really helpful for your digestion,
yep.
is another really good place to start as well. But I will say, to bring in that mindfulness piece to it, is, have your meals seated. So much in mom life, especially as they get a little bit bigger and more mobile, where we're eating our lunch, if we're eating it, at the counter while we're making them their meals and running to
Yeah.
something else. So it's just like, as much as you can, stop, put your phone down and away, and just sit and have your meal and pay attention to your food. And
Yeah.
that in and of itself can be like a mindful meditation. So no, to your point earlier,
Absolutely.
you don't have to have a 15-minute meditation if we're
Right.
just taking these small moments throughout our
Yeah.
day to
Well,
allow ourselves.
no, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say you were just talking about the food thing, and it made me think of how so many of my clients, especially first time parents, are like, "What do I do with my kid during their awake window? I don't know what to do." Right? And also, as they start to get closer to eating solids, my big answer for a lot of them is like, "Well, just like in the morning, I like there people be like, I can't eat breakfast." Well, like you have a content kiddo, then like pop them on the ground on a mat, or put them in the high chair next to you or in a bouncer and eat your breakfast. And if they start to get like fussy, just explain to them what you're eating. There's a video on my phone of me explaining to a 5-month-old what I'm eating, and I was talking about grapes and how they're choking hazards, but he was so hyped staring at me. And
Yes.
so it's one of those things that, like, I was eating a carrot and I'm like, look, it's crunchy. Like, they really do find anything that you're saying interesting, and you can take that time to, like, be with yourself and also, like, be making a moment with your child too, right?
Yes, I think that's such a good point. And I think that also speaks to the pressure that we feel, that we have to do a
Yeah.
million things and get things right, and have the perfect activity set up for our babies the entire time they're awake, when, like, that's not the case at
They
all.
don't
Yeah,
need it.
absolutely, put them on a mat, give them some tummy time, or have them on their side. And as a PT, I love that. My kids
Yeah.
were always on the floor, like, always.
Yeah.
It's so good for them.
Right.
So,
I love it.
and especially if they are within eye sight of you and they can see what you're doing, they're fascinated by
Oh, they
everything
love
that
it.
we
They're
do. Yeah,
so tuned in. I love it. They love you more than they love any other toy. So be their exciting toy,
absolutely.
right? I love
Yes.
that. So, I would love for you to kind of give everybody a quick recap on what this program is that you do, because I know you talked a little bit about how it has all the different pillars that are going to help people for postpartum wellness and pelvic wellness as well. Um, and I'll make sure the link is below for it. But I do think that if people are feeling like related to this topic, that kind of working with you and understanding this program to feel like themselves again is really the best gift of all. So I would love for you to kind of share a little bit more about what that program might look like if somebody decides to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called the Postpartum Revolution, and it's designed to really revolutionize how we're caring for our mothers. Um, because let's be honest, for a long time we just were not. So like, that needs to change. But yeah, no, it's revolutionizing how we care for our mothers, because it's mother focused, and it focuses on the pillars of postpartum wellness, which, again, to reiterate, are the movement, pelvic health, nutrition, and the nervous system regulation. So it goes through all of that. There's short educational components to that, just so you kind of have an idea of, like, where is this stuff coming from. If
Yeah.
you don't really care to find out all that, you can skip that, and just get to the good stuff. So there's a month's worth of recipes that are all easy. The majority of them, I want to say almost all, are one pot meals, because
Love it.
while I would love for somebody else to be making the meals for you, I know that that's not always reality.
Right.
So they're simple meals that you can make that will reheat well, that are steeped in postpartum nutrition concepts. So it's high proteins, high fats, good fibers, and lots of warm cooked broth based meals. as well as the physical recovery components. So there is some pelvic health information, which I don't want you to skip over. So that I do think is very vital. But there are exercises and exercise progression as well that is not specific to your core or your pelvic floor per se. Obviously, that's a part of it, but it really is a whole body approach because your whole body is affected in pregnancy.
Right.
Which again is why we are going through the pillars. Like you need to focus on nutrition, you need whole body progressive exercises to kind of ease you back into things. And these are exercises that you can start as early as the second week postpartum. If you had a C-section, you might want to wait a little bit longer than that, but they're very gentle movement based. And then the nervous system regulation techniques, which are some short meditations, some breathing exercises. There's a couple of different tools you can try and figure out what one works best for you and what you can integrate into your day, because really at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's small practices that you can really weave into your everyday so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. And when you're focused on doing all of that, it shouldn't be more than 30 minutes in a day, because again,
Amazing.
We don't have time for that. So
no.
we need to pull out the fluff and make sure that it's just very action based, what you need to do.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
I love it because you definitely have like kind of touched upon like what we've said today on having something coming from like every avenue, right? You're able to kind of attack this as a whole and not just from one path.
Yeah. Our transition into motherhood, our whole person, whole body is affected. And the only way to really move through it is by addressing all of that as well. So it's designed for early postpartum, but if you're still feeling postpartum, then it is also designed for you because it's never too late to start your postpartum recovery. And that's true whether you're 3 months out, 6 months out, 3 years out. If you're still feeling very postpartum, being like depleted and achy, uncomfortable, you just don't feel like yourself in your body, you feel overwhelmed all the time, then that's very early postpartum type symptoms. And we want to make sure that we're not just glossing over that and normalizing that as what your life is now. That's not mom life. That's what the story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah. It's not a badge of honor. Don't take it as a badge of honor.
Oh gosh, that could be a whole other episode. That was me for a while.
It's a big one for me. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me and for sharing all this information. And if you are listening and you relate, definitely know you're not alone. Check out the show notes below, and reach out to get started on your postpartum revolution.
And if it's okay, I'd love to give your listeners a 10% discount.
Absolutely.
They can use code Madison 10, and we can make sure we get that in the show notes too.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely check it out, and we will hopefully hear from y'all soon. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Postpartum Plan podcast. I hope that today's episode brought you support, relatability, and valuable insight. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review and share with any of your prenatal and postpartum friends and family. Your feedback helps us reach more parents seeking support. And if you're looking for additional resources, please feel free to connect via Instagram at Serene Moments Doula for constant information, tips, and tricks, or check out my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com. See you next week.